Coming up on Network Africa. Morocco and Israeli officials signed several memorandums of understanding to boost new diplomatic relations. The United Nations says it is increasingly concerned about the situation of civilians in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. Plus, UNICEF warns that the escalating crisis in Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado may have displaced up to 250,000 children. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. Moroccan and Israeli officials have signed several memorandum of understandings that mark the establishment of diplomatic relations between two countries. Officials say investments will focus on economic development, supporting businesses and technology in Morocco. Israeli officials arrived in Morocco on Tuesday to meet the king and flesh out an upgrade of relations that was forged by the White House in a parting foreign policy push by U.S. President Donald Trump.
What's next? After the agreements are signed today and the memos of understanding, I will probably be down in the southern provinces opening our consulate. And then I think over the coming months, you can look for more agreements between Israel and our partners, coming with innovation and perhaps technology, matching it with Morocco's entrepreneurship. We're very excited about what can be coming.
I'm thrilled to be standing next to our Moroccan and Israeli partners in Rabat to open the door wide to a new era of cooperation. Morocco and Israel are making huge strides on their commitments to resume full diplomatic relations, promote economic cooperation, and to reopen their liaison offices very quickly. This visit is enormously productive so far, and we have more to come tonight and tomorrow. The Moroccan and Israeli delegations have several MOUs and agreements that are ready to sign, and more are being drafted in a very wide range of sectors.
We'll have more on that, but in the meantime, let's take a look at some other stories. The United Nations says the town of Bambari in the Central African Republic has been retaken from rebels who seized it on Tuesday. A spokesperson says UN peacekeepers and national security forces are in control, having pushed the militants back into the bush. Reports say civilians who had fled the fighting were starting to return. The CAR is due to hold elections on Sunday. Meanwhile, Russia and Rwanda have sent hundreds of additional troops to bolster the government as the rebels try to advance towards the capital. Now, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet has expressed increasing concerns about the situation of civilians in the Tigray region of Ethiopia. This follows the continuing lack of overall humanitarian access and ongoing communications blackout in many areas 7 weeks after the conflict began. The High Commissioner welcomed the Ethiopian government's statement that there would be unimpeded humanitarian access in line with the agreement with the UN signed on November the 29th. But she stressed that this needs to be all areas of Tigray where civilians have been affected by the fighting.
Concerns concern the fact that we have received consistent information pointing to violations of international humanitarian law and human rights law by all parties to the conflict. And these include artillery strikes on populated areas, the deliberate targeting of civilians, extrajudicial killings, and widespread looting. While we're not in a position to verify these reports on the ground, they do point to a failure by the parties to the conflict to protect civilians. Among the accounts, witnesses described artillery strikes on the town of Humera on the border with Eritrea between the 9th and the 11th of November. We interviewed several people from the town who alleged that shells launched from Eritrea had hit residential areas and the hospital. Artillery strikes against the town of Adigrat in early November reportedly forced many families to flee to the mountains. They were then trapped by heavy fighting between the 20th and 24th of November, and many people were reported to have been killed. This underscores the need, as the High Commissioner is stressing today in her press release, the need for independent human rights monitors to be given access to Tigray to adequately assess the human suffering resulting from the conflict, verify allegations, and to help ensure accountability.
Meanwhile, the UN Refugee Agency and partners have launched an urgent appeal for funding needs for the over 52,000 refugees who have fled Ethiopia's Tigray region. The armed conflict broke out on November the 4th between the federal government and regional forces, driving thousands of people to flee their homes, more than half of them women and children.
We are releasing, together with 30 humanitarian partners, an urgent appeal for $156 million to support refugees fleeing Ethiopia's Tigray crisis. The requested funds are needed to meet the critical humanitarian needs of Ethiopian refugees fleeing the conflict in Tigray throughout the first half of 2021. This appeal will also strengthen preparedness to receive refugees in other countries in the region in case of further refugee movements. The critical activities include registration, documentation, ensuring civilian character of asylum, decongesting of the border site areas, transferring refugees to the new settlements, provision of food, health and education services, support for groups with specific needs, particularly for women and girls at risk, unaccompanied minors, the disabled and the elderly. In eastern Sudan, since the 14th of November to date, more than 20,000 refugees have been relocated from the border areas to Rakuba camp, which is located some 75 kilometers from Gedaref town. At this site, as this site approaches its capacity, we and our partners will begin next week preparatory work on a new site further inland, some 136 kilometers away from Gedaref town.
The United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, says approximately 250,000 children have been displaced by the escalating crisis in Mozambique's northern province of Cabo Delgado. The agency says the displaced children are now at risk of deadly diseases as the rainy season sets in.
And conflict over the past 2 years have contributed to food insecurity and hunger across Cabo Delgado. 2 out of every 5 children in the province are chronically malnourished, and more cases of severe acute malnutrition are being detected amongst the displaced population. These teams visit communities and accommodation centers to screen children for their nutritional status, provide life-saving treatment with therapeutic food for severe cases, and refer children with medical complications to the nearest health center. Mobile health teams also provide regular health care to women, mothers, and children.
We came here because we were fleeing the war. Some days, I remember my mother, father, and all the people. All of them, I remember.
Many children have witnessed or experienced extreme violence or even lost close family members to brutal killings and abduction. They need a comprehensive protection response, including psychosocial support after experiencing such traumatic events. UNICEF and its partners are running child-friendly spaces where displaced children can enjoy activities in a safe and secure environment. Our trained facilitators can identify those who need more specialized care. There is an urgent need to expand the network of trained case workers who can visit surviving children and their families at home to offer psychosocial support and referrals to protection and social services. In 2021, UNICEF is appealing for $52.8 million to respond to the most urgent humanitarian needs in Mozambique, including $30 million as part of the humanitarian response plan for Cabo Delgado.
Kenyan lawmakers have voted to end tax cuts put in place in early April to help citizens to deal with the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. President Uhuru Kenyatta announced the relief just weeks after the country recorded its first coronavirus case. The measures included reduction of income tax, value-added tax and corporate tax by between 2% and 5%. The steps were meant to cushion Kenyans and businesses from the pandemic, which greatly affected the tourism and agriculture sectors, which are the backbone of the country's economy. But lawmakers say the measures are not sustainable. Last week, the finance minister announced that the country had lost nearly $600 million in revenue since the tax breaks began. As the world embarks on an unprecedented campaign to bring vaccines to millions, often in remote locations, experts say vital lessons can be learned from the Democratic Republic of Congo. In 2018, during an outbreak of Ebola, health officials needed to deploy an experimental vaccine that had to be kept at between -60 and -80 degrees Celsius. They did that with the Arctech device, effectively a giant thermos that can be filled with vaccines and special ice packs.
When Ebola hit the city of Mbandaka in Northwest Democratic Republic of Congo in May 2018, health officials had to act fast. The city was connected via regular boat service to the sprawling capital Kinshasa, where the deadly virus could spread out of control. Unlike previous outbreaks, they had a new weapon, an experimental vaccine that could revolutionize the fight against Ebola, if only they could keep the vials between -60 and -80 degrees Celsius in tropical humidity and across rough terrain. At the heart of the rollout was a high-tech thermos that could fit on the back of a motorbike or the floor of a canoe and keep vials cold for a week, essential in Congo, where less than 1 in 10 people have access to electricity. The Arctech device, as it's known, works like a giant coffee thermos that can be filled with vaccines and special ice packs.
If we're dealing with cryogenic vaccines like the Pfizer one currently requires -80, we can put your ice in the Arctech and use it for that. If somebody would like to use the Moderna vaccine, you can get a phase change material at -20, and you can store the Moderna vaccine. If later we're using another vaccine that's at refrigerated temperatures, you can go back to water ice packs. So again, the thermos, the Arctech can evolve with the country's evolving needs for cold storage.
As the world embarks on an unprecedented campaign to bring ultra-cold COVID-19 vaccines to billions in often remote areas, Democratic Republic of Congo's experience holds vital lessons in distributing the vaccine and gaining the trust of those meant to receive it. Between 2018 and 2020, health workers inoculated more than 400,000 people in 3 Ebola outbreaks. It was the largest rollout of an ultra-cold chain vaccine in history.
It's a large country. It's about the size of Western Europe. It's very diverse. Topographically, it's very diverse. There's lots of rivers, there's lots of jungles, there's mountains, and there's very few paved roads. So getting around is complicated. You are usually using dirt paths, which can often be flooded during the rainy season. You're often having to cross rivers, which may or may not have bridges or availability to be crossed by boat. So there's a lot of logistical challenges in delivering vaccines to the people that get them. Beyond that, another challenge is the fact that there's not electricity available everywhere.
However, advances in cold chain technology means little if health workers do not earn public trust and dispel misinformation, and missteps can be deadly.
In Africa, they used to tell that we just used to make the vaccine to exterminate the African people, or the vaccine will make the men weaken, or it will make the women infertile, or it will make the child not smart, not intelligent. So we need to start the community strategy and the communication strategies now to overcome that kind of misinformation before we start implementing the vaccination.
According to MSF, the Democratic Republic of Congo recorded more than 300 attacks on health workers during the 2-year Ebola outbreak, leaving 6 people dead and 70 wounded.
Still to come on the program. Artists in Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement. Details in a moment. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on the program. Let's head back to our top story of the day now, where Moroccan and Israeli officials have signed several memorandums of understanding that mark the establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. Let's get more on this story from African Affairs analyst Alistair Wilcox. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. What do you make...
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Definitely. What do you make of the historic visit of a high-level Israeli delegation to Morocco?
Well, the delegation to Morocco is a welcome development. That gives credence to the earlier announcement that is being said that went out as a normalization of relationship between Israel and Morocco. So with this delegation now going into Rabat for those high-level discussions, that has given credence to those facts that the two parties mean business. Like I said before, when this issue came to the fore, the Israelis will really want to get their relationship right with the Arab world. And this has been going on for a while now. Morocco being the latest in the series. They've done that with Sudan, they've done that with Bahrain, they've done that with United Arab Emirates. So Morocco now joining the all narrowing down to peace, development and justice between Israelis and the Arab world.
Well, we have to remember that this peace deal was brokered by Washington, and the U.S.'s Middle East envoy, Jared Kushner, also accompanied the Israeli team. How do you think Africa, especially North Africa, will remember the outgoing Trump administration?
Well, talking about Africa as a whole, I do not think Africa has anything to remember Trump for, because he was not African-friendly. He was someone that said that called Africa a shithole country and all. So talking about generally, Africa will not remember Trump for anything positive. But talking about the Arab world and normalization of relationship, well, with some of the countries from Africa, like Northern African countries, that have gradually normalized relationship with Israel, I think he will be scored very high. Because that's one agenda that he had, that which past presidents were not able to accomplish. I mean, talking about relationship between the Jews, Israel, and the Arab world. And I think I give it to Kushner, the special envoy to the Middle East of the United States, of the president. He has done quite a lot. I mean, nobody gave him a chance in terms of diplomatic experience. Nobody gave him a chance. But results have shown that he has done quite tremendously well in narrowing the gap, in bringing together the age-long animosity between the Israelis and the Arab world. Now, if this Morocco deal, of course, it is already settled. So the moment this Morocco deal goes on, maybe before the president finally leaves office on 20th of January, who knows? Another country might just sign in. So he has done quite well in that diplomatic front. But if you're talking about Africa generally, in terms of African relations with the U.S., I don't think any African country will say anything positive about Donald Trump. But with this diplomatic move and with the Arab world, which Africa, for some point Africa, I think they will do some pluses and some kudos for those feats that he has achieved.
Yeah, all right then, African Affairs analyst Alistair Wilcox, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and analysis with us on Network Africa. Moving on now, some artists in Sierra Leone's capital, Freetown, have held an artist exhibition titled In Black We Trust. The exhibition is a show of solidarity with the global Black Lives Matter movement. 15 artists from Sierra Leone's Bare collective, founded by Howard Jane Bangura, showcased a body of work calling for more social justice in Africa and promoting a stronger, more positive Black identity.
In solidarity with the global Black Lives Matter movement, a collective of young painters and photographers in Sierra Leone recently came together to showcase artworks, promoting more social justice in Africa and a stronger, more positive Black identity. The Beret Collective, as they are known, is made up of 15 artists founded by Freetown-based painter Hawa Jane Bangura in 2013. Today, Bangura is finishing off a portrait of George Floyd, an unarmed black man who died in police custody in the United States in May this year, when a white police officer knelt on his neck for nearly 9 minutes.
I think it's different for us living in Africa because we are not a minority, we're a majority. I mean, the president is black, everybody's black, the ministers are black. Black men are important people in our society. They're not the bottom of the society. They're not disrespected in the same way as they are in America. You know, but when we see this sort of thing, I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's unbelievable. We can't believe that a black man is being treated in this sort of way, you know. And when it comes down to it, I mean, we're all the same people.
Through the 2-week art exhibition In Black We Trust, Bangura is also asking artists to redefine black identity and fight negative perceptions of Africans.
The discrimination or the war against black people is ongoing here, and I think that with the sort of work that I produced for this exhibition, I've tried to like put all of that together. You know, the discrimination that black Americans face in this foreign country, and you know, the stuff that we have to deal with here in our own country, although it might not be the same type of discrimination.
For Bangura, discrimination and police brutality are not unique to the U.S., but also a reality in African countries where authorities repress individuals and groups fighting for social justice and equality.
Our theme this year wasn't specifically about Sierra Leone. It's about what we saw going on around the world, like in Nigeria, Uganda, and some other African countries, even in Guinea. African authorities don't really, they are not held responsible for things they do.
Bangura is Sierra Leone's premier fine art painter, one of the few to have patrons all over the world. A former lawyer, Bangura's pieces often convey messages of social justice, whether they're hanging in the offices of government officials or adorning Freetown streets as some of the city's largest murals. Feka is also showing his work at the exhibition. Whether promoting positive images or challenging negative ones, the message from the Beret's artists to their Sierra Leonean patrons is the same: I am black and I am proud.
As should be. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shoboale.